Right, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've now just heard from Robert, and he's talked very much about the need to grow grass to feed cows. But this morning I want you to think about what is it we are actually trying to do with pasture. And then I'll talk about what I'm doing to put it into practice, and again mention having the right cow for the job. So very often we think that we're growing grass to feed a cow, but actually we're harvesting sunshine to grow grass. And that is the key to everything we do. It's not about MP and K, it's about sunshine. And if you look at Robert's ryegrass plant, when he's grazing it in the short grass grazing that he's doing, he tends to graze that grass at the 3-leaf stage, because ryegrass, as the 4th leaf appears, the 1st leaf starts to senesce and stem starts to be produced. So on the one hand, we're wasting grass growth, and on the other hand, he's diluting his green concentrate with a bit of fibre. So that ryegrass plant, after it's been grazed, leaf emergence under constant growing conditions is the same time for each leaf. It can be anything from 5 to 35 days. If we say leaf emergence is a week, so the first week after grazing, the 1st leaf appears, the 2nd week, the 2nd leaf, and the 3rd week, the 3rd leaf. If we then analyse that grass plant, the 1st leaf contains 15% of the dry matter, the 2nd leaf 25%, and the 3rd leaf 60%. So we've grown 4 times as much grass in the 3rd week as we grew in the 1st week. Why? Because we already had 2 leaves up, which were capturing sunshine and driving the growth in that 3rd week. So what we're needing on these pastures is as much leaf area as possible, because what we're actually running is a biological energy transfer system. We're taking energy from the sun. We'll go there first. Energy from the sun in photosynthesis, and the plant takes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water from the soil, combines the two to make sugar, and it stores that sun's energy in the carbon-hydrogen bond in the sugar. That sugar molecule, the glucose, is then either the building block for the plant growth or the energy to drive that plant growth. And that energy is then stored in the plant, is passed up the food chain to the cow, and subsequently into the milk and onto the human. When we get enough, so what we're doing is encouraging that plant to photosynthesize as much as possible. And actually, is it pH, P and K, and nitrogen we need? Or do we need other minerals? And when we did tissue analysis on our pastures, which is not forage mineral analysis, this is tissue analysis, this is treating the grass plant as a crop. What does that plant need to grow? We're on limestone soils, high calcium, and by far the most limiting factor to our grass growth was magnesium. Magnesium, the central element to chlorophyll. Without that, we're not going to capture any sunshine. Way behind that, but all grouped together, was copper, zinc, and manganese. Trace elements essential for photosynthesis, essential for plant physiology. And way down the line, even on an organic farm, not applying any PKN fertilizer, N, P, and K were nowhere near limiting. So we've got to look at this plant growth and look at supplying the elements that are required to feed that plant to maximize photosynthesis and the capture of sunshine. The larger leaf area we can have on these paddocks, the more sunshine we can capture, the more sugar the plant produces. As that plant, or when the plant is first grazed, it takes energy from the boot of the plant, from the roots, to push the first leaf out. That then starts to photosynthesize and feed extra growth. As it grows more and more leaf, it's producing more sugar than it needs for leaf growth. It rebuilds the reserves in the roots, in the boot of the plant. As that plant then grows further, which is beyond the stage of the three-leaf ryegrass, it grows more canopy, captures more sunshine, and can be producing 3 to 4 times as much sugar as it actually needs for growth. That excess sugar is then passed down through the plant, through the roots, into the soil to feed the soil microbes. Some of that is then used as an energy source for the microbes, but some of it is also built up into complex carbon compounds, which we loosely term humus, and becomes the soil's store of organic matter. And we know well about what organic matter does for soil. It opens soil structure, makes it more easier for rainwater to infiltrate the soil. It stops erosion. It holds more water in the soil, holds more nutrients. But actually, that organic matter is an energy reserve of the soil, and it takes energy from the soil to grow a crop. And what we're actually doing when we're applying fertilizers such as nitrogen, triple superphosphate, muriate of potash, whatever, these fertilizers are a concentrated form of energy. And when we actually apply those to the soil then needs to utilize true energy, which is this carbon-based energy, to balance that energy that's just being thrown onto it. And when it does that, it reduces some of the organic matter in the soil, so releasing the other nutrients attached to that, which is what helps give you that boost in crop growth. And what is happening over years is that this response to nitrogen is getting less and less because there's less energy stored in the soil to help that happen. So by growing these bigger pastures, we're building this energy reserve of the soil, which ultimately gives us a much more resilient and productive soil. So to put this into practice, we are growing diverse swards. It's a mixture of grasses, clovers, herbs. The benefit of these is that when we do graze them at a taller stage, they maintain their digestibility, their feed value much more, and we are actually grazing these with dairy cows. It's all down to grazing management to get the most out of it, and we also use a lot of compost. So grazing management, being a dairy cow, we need a quality diet. By grazing these swards just at the point of flowering, we can graze them when they still have good quality in them. It might not be the 12 ME, 4% nitrogen, 25% crude protein ryegrass, but usually we'll be grazing swards with 11.5 ME and 18 to 20% protein, which is a balanced diet for a dairy cow. We graze tidy to keep the quality of the sward going forward, but not too tight. We want to leave some leaf area to help grow that grass regrowth, remembering that grass grows grass. I grazed some this summer, which I thought I'd grazed too tight, and we were down to about 1,800, 2,000 residual, which compared to Robert, who's probably grazing to 1,400, 1,600. And I decided that was too short, and that actually cost me a week's regrowth. So we are leaving quite good residuals, but still managing to graze the paddocks tidy. This is actually some beef cattle on a patch of ryegrass. I reseeded a 25-acre field in spring 2012, undersown to cereals, and just to remind myself why I don't grow ryegrass, I put 5 acres of a ryegrass clover mix in the middle of it. The interesting thing with this is it's been followed by the solid project comparing the ryegrass and the diverse sward. And in fact, over the last 2 years, so we're still in the first 2 years of the production, the two swards have produced the same amount of forage, pretty much identical feed value, but the difference is the production profile. The ryegrass produces a huge peak of forage in the spring, a massive trough in the summer, and a little bit of a blip in the autumn, whereas the diverse sward actually produces a consistent amount of feed throughout the summer. This is that ryegrass sward later in the summer, where the ryegrass is about giving up and there's just clover. And this is the diverse sward at the same time, just next to it, still with plenty of forage on it. This is an older sward, now in its 7th year, becoming more grass dominant. This is what we were grazing with the cows. This is later in the season. We're getting some build-up around cow parts of stronger stuff. Some of that will be trampled, but still, without using a mower or anything, we are managing to graze these swards fairly tight. We have got some senescent material in the base of the plant, which is important for feeding the soil, feeding the worms, and keeping everything moving. Compost is a great way of bringing extra organic matter onto farms. I'm lucky where we live in the Cotswolds. We've got some big arable farmers around us who are desperate to sell their organic matter, and we are quite happy to go and buy that in. We use large amounts of it. We outwinter a lot of cows. We're lucky we have quite a bit of hard standing. We're on an old airfield, so we'll lie cows back on straw pads on a night, using straw liberally. This is then turned during the summer months, and most of it spread over the autumn at quite low rates. 2 years ago, we made it go as far as we could, so we were only spreading about 8 tons a hectare. This year, we targeted where it was going. We had a lot more to spread as well, and that was going on about 15 tons a hectare. But it's a great way of adding organic matter to the soil, extra energy to the soil. It adds microbes to the soil, and these microbes are being added to the soil not as an inoculant, but they've already got a home and a feed source, which gives them much more chance to get established back in the soil, and it's adding extra available nutrients. Composting. At the end of the day, what we're grazing doesn't work unless we have a cow that can deal with it. And we are looking for a medium-sized, deep-bodied cow. It's said that a good grazing animal, body depth should equal 60% of shoulder height. An excellent grazing animal, that body depth should equal 75% of shoulder height. And trying to find cows today that are built like that is difficult. Back in the 90s, we had some Nicholas Storm daughters from New Zealand seamen, and they were built like that. They weren't very big cows, but very deep-bodied, robust cows which could eat a huge amount of forage. And the type of forage we are feeding, we want the cows to be able to go eat a huge bellyful and then go and lay down for the rest of the day and ruminate, because it's when that cow is laid down she's producing milk. With the short grass, it's high in water-soluble sugars, it's high in non-protein nitrogen. It's kind of like feeding a fire on kindling. You put a lot on, it burns rapidly, you then have to go and stoke it again. And these cows are eating regularly, whereas this taller grass is more digestible fiber, more complete protein. It digests much more steadily. It's more like feeding that fire on good hardwood logs. But what we need for this system is a cow that can eat a large amount of it quickly and then go and lie down. So and also where we are, we're at 800 feet on the top of the Cotswolds, quite an exposed farm. So over the last 8 years, we've introduced quite a bit of dairy short-on into the cows, which is a good hardy cow for what we're looking at. We've used part British Friesian, part Holstein, and we are now using predominantly New Zealand black and white because we've now found some bulls that have good scores for capacity and are hopefully going back to the old style cow, but with the milk production from it. So to sum up, what we're looking at doing is keeping as much leaf area on the paddock at all times throughout the grazing season, feeding that plant to maximize the use of photosynthesis so that that plant can feed this biological energy transfer system, not just taking energy from the sun to feed the cow to produce milk, but also feeding a large amount of that energy into the soil, so building the resilience and productivity of the soil as we go forward. Thank you.